In the not too distant future, you're going to notice a clear and defined change in the perception of security on multiple levels through multiple areas. Some of the more subtle things will become a lot more obvious. There will be different groups and stages and phases to which this all evolves through, which it's still currently ongoing. This is the Urban Sentinel, and let's get into it. All right, folks, in an older video I talked about marauders, raiders, and bandits of the apocalypse, a post-SHTF situation to which, by and large, I was referring to already existing gangs and criminal enterprises that, without the rule of law, are free to do whatever they want. And I also did reference that in many cases you will have people that normally would not do the things that would be done in that sort of scenario banding together simply to survive and keep themselves alive. This is more on the aspect of, we'll say it as it is right now, the present day of personal and private security as we know it in its current existence. Now, I'm not referring to anything on a governmental level. I'm not talking about security at military bases or government installations. I'm not talking about Secret Service or anything like that. I'm not even referring to local law enforcement on state, county, or municipal level in terms of what they do. This is on the private security aspect, private security companies and individuals that have their own private security or locations that provide security for people, depending upon the circumstance. Most of us, when we think about private security, personal security, we envision, as it is justifiable, people with a lot of money that are placed in a certain value bracket where they have bodyguards and armed security personnel and armored vehicles, and they have multi-stage entry points into their point of residence or business or whatever it may be. And that is true. And we've seen news reports, articles, stories, different things like that about wealthy individuals having underground bunkers being built, especially as of the last 5 years. We have people that have significant amounts of money and they have private security on their private island, or they've got, 300 acres worth of land and it's all fenced in and monitored. All that stuff is part of their personal security. And it also ties into, there are companies out there that for the right price will provide that level of security to people. Now that comes into two phases. Phase number one, simply put, you have to be able to afford their services, period. They're not working for free. They need to be paid. So you have to be a person that has that type of money all laid out and all set up to be able to pay them to do the job that you need, which is keeping you alive, keeping you safe, protecting you and anyone that you consider to be within your circle safe from harm. The other aspect of it is companies that provide for a business or an area. They may do a blanket protection. So you may have situations where a building or a large community of complex buildings, an estate or something like that, where you have different people, not necessarily directly connected to each other, but they all benefit from the overall security that's provided to them from this company. But again, it still comes down to someone has to be able to pay the bill. Now, it is undeniable, although there are people on the internet that will downplay it as much as possible, mainstream media, a lot of the political pundits, because if it's not favorable for their aspect of what they're trying to push in their agenda, they all downplay the rise of crime. But crime is still increasing every place. Taking point, the Speaker of the House's husband was attacked. Now, granted, based upon only the information that's been out so far, the attacker was actually looking for the Speaker of the House. Took the husband as a substitute. But irregardless of that, someone broke into the home and attacked a resident. So that's, again, a level of security. And not going into the whole thing of, where's the Secret Service, all this kind of stuff, that yes, on the political aspect, the Speaker of the House is the third in line. So President, Vice President, Speaker of the House. But they don't put the same level of security on all of the people until there's a need. So the First Lady has a lower level of security versus the President. The first husband or the Vice President's husband, his level of security is lower than that. The Speaker of the House, that spouse is lower than that. So until there's a need, they don't increase the level of security just to have it up there. Now, private security You can tailor that to however you want to have your personal level of protection. It might be one bodyguard, it might be a driver and a guard, it might be an entire squad following in a trail car, it might be people going ahead as an advance team, setting things up. Effectively speaking, whatever you can pay for, whatever you want to have set up, that's the level of security that you get. Now, with that being said, if you live in areas where there are gated communities, some gated communities are strictly age residential, 55 and plus. Some are open to whoever can afford to live there. Some gated communities sit literally blocks away from, a downtown busy area. I mean, if you look at Las Vegas as an example, there are gated communities around the Las Vegas Strip only a few blocks away. But when you get into that community, unless you look towards where the Strip is, you'd have no idea that you're, effectively speaking, in the heart of Las Vegas. And there are gated communities like that all around the country, all around major cities, and also in suburban areas. Even in suburban areas, you have entire towns where sections and neighborhoods, to one extent, have one road that comes in. There may be 5 or 6, 7 roads within that neighborhood that all interlink and interloop or end up being cul-de-sacs within it. So that neighborhood by itself becomes its own enclave, its own community. And effectively speaking, even if the people that live there don't all know each other, they all have an idea of what vehicles normally come in, what vehicles go out, school buses coming in, deliveries coming in. So they have an idea of when something isn't right, when someone doesn't belong there. And we've seen, internet shorts and TikToks and that stuff where someone comes into that gated community and the neighborhood doesn't recognize them, and someone is, calling up the cops and, harassing the person. But it's a delivery guy dropping off some furniture for a new resident that just bought a house at the end of the block, and things always tend to escalate because from their perspective, someone's intruded upon their safety and their security. Now, this leads me to the concept of the 21st century warlord. And I'm not referring to warlords as far as drug warlords and human trafficking warlords and things that are already in place right now. I'm not talking about the really bad guys that are actual warlords, in places like South America and Africa and, Eastern Europe, things like that. I'm talking about in a post-SHTF situation, not a short-term little hiccup, but you wake up in the morning and you just know this is going to be a long haul run for the next 5-10 years. Warlords are going to start popping up because they have the protection, they have the security, they have the means to which to enforce their will, or at the minimum to reduce and restrict other people's access and needs that they need. These individuals may start off, effectively speaking, on the surface as being that wealthy individual that might be in a town near you or might live 2-3 blocks away from you in one of those gated communities or has that large house on the hill. They're going to protect their assets. Whether it's a small time or a long period, they're going to protect what they have. And many of them have personal security or have the possibility to immediately get security and have it on the property. And depending upon where it is, that may extend out to certain levels of rings of influence as it goes. So that security force for this one person may get hired to become the security force for the next 3 or 4 other wealthy individuals that effectively pool in and pay for it. And now they control several blocks of their neighborhood or the entire neighborhood as it is, restricting and controlling and observing everything that goes on. In an SHTF situation, you may think, well, I'll just avoid that area. And for many of us, not a problem. But depending upon the circumstances that a disaster has happened and what is going on, especially if there is either no oversight or official government working, or it's spaced out and sporadic, where some areas there's strong government presence and other areas not so much. So what you can expect to see, and it may not be something that's going to happen right away, but you can expect to see private individuals, companies, organizations building up their security presently, reinforcing and hardening up structures, putting up perimeter defenses, whether it be gates or putting up decorative barriers. If you've lived in any large metropolitan city, especially over the last 5 to 10 years, you may have noticed a lot of the apartment complexes that have large glass street level windows have had them replaced over the years. And you can tell that they're a reinforced type of glass because when the light hits it, it has a very slight green sort of tinge or hue to it because the glass is actually thicker. Some cases it's a solid 1 inch, inch and a quarter thick piece, single piece of glass. Other cases, it's several quarter-inch layers of glass with a safety film. This helps reduce and prevent, in many cases, direct blunt impact. Hammer, pickaxe, bricks, that sort of thing, they effectively bounce off, or a person's really got to basically stand there and hammer away for minutes at a time to break through layer after layer after layer. Some buildings, you may have noticed decorative planters where they've got greenery in front. These planter boxes might run several sections or the full length of the open face of the building. Solid concrete, they might sit up 4 feet high, be 2 feet wide, but they weigh 500-600 pounds without any soil or dirt in it. That helps reduce the chance that unless someone's driving a 10-ton truck, any vehicle breaking through into the front of the building. Places like that, they have extra cameras on there, they have controlled entry points, and many of the newer facilities, they put amenities in there, both to entice people to rent or to buy, but also to provide a sort of safe haven for them. When you've got a laundromat, a coffee shop, a bookstore, and several other things within your actual apartment complex or your condo complex, you don't need to go outside. And in the event that outside is a dangerous place to be, all of that is already in there provided for you. Now, a lot of us live in areas where there are neighborhood watches, or we've seen the signs up, and realistically, I will say 8 out of 10 neighborhood watches, it's one person that takes an interest or an effort, but effectively speaking, it's more for show than anything else. Unless there's something really fishy, something shady going on that just can't be ignored, most neighborhood watches aren't doing that. It's just that random individual that takes the time to sit around all day long because they're there and observe the comings and goings and decide 911 or whatever the local number is, they're going to call something in. Other than that, most neighborhood watches don't really do anything. Post-collapse, those neighborhood watches are going to have to change because, effectively speaking, everyone in that neighborhood, people that are remaining, people that don't have a bug-out place to go to or the means to get there, are going to have to protect each other. So you're going to band together and you will become, to one extent or another, your own security force. You will be protecting yourself, your assets, which are your place of residence, and your personal safety. And in many cases, the warlords, as it were, spawn from that. Whether it be that one person in the neighborhood that takes the time to start knocking on doors after that disaster and saying, look, this is what we know has happened. We know help is not coming. We know this is going on. We know this could possibly happen. We need to do this, this, and this, and start putting plans into motion. That individual that can get several people quickly on board, even if they've never discussed it, to go, okay, that's a good idea. I see what you're going with, and we're all going to start working together. They then at that point direct and move and organize things. And it's not necessarily that they're going to be sitting around on some throne with an AK-47 in their lap directing people what to do. It's simply they're going to become the person in charge that sets the tempo for how the rest of the group, the neighborhood, then interact and respond to things as they go on. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, with regards to the private security companies, what happens if there is a grid collapse and, finances go bye-bye? Those wealthy individuals, it would be upon their interest to have a backup plan to keep the security that they have. Their security is going to want some type of payment. They're going to want to have something. So now, granted, super wealthy people probably take this into account, where if they've got an estate with a huge mansion and a guest house, they're bound to have some place where the security can stay. They're bound to have effectively a guard garrison and things like that, so they can offer room, board, and everything else. In terms of finances, maybe they've got a stash of silver and gold, maybe they've got cans of tuna, I don't know. It's whatever they're going to end up paying with. But you're not going to see what you'd see in a movie where, we're going to take over your mansion and your estate, because it does no good for them, because now they're responsible for maintaining this. They're responsible for everything, and they're still not getting paid. So if it's strictly they want cash in their pockets, if there's none available, there's none available. So they have to be effectively guided into doing this for their benefit of survival, staying alive, but as well as for the overall benefit that, hey, as long as you protect me, you can go out into the wildlands and do whatever you want, and you come back just to make sure everything's okay here. Whereas individuals that don't have a lot of money, that are the new neighborhood watches that have band together, you and I are on that level where we are most likely going to be the ones that are going to be defending ourselves from those marauders, raiders, and bandits. And as I had mentioned in that other video, there's that fine line between simply defending yourself and protecting the people within your group, and then actively going out to do harm or to actually go out and engage people on that sort of aggressive level. And there are many scenarios and situations to which you can say, well, this is defense here, this is an outright offensive action in this condition. This would be justified to this level, but not justified taking it beyond that level. And again, we're here right now in the present. This is something that could happen in the near future. And when it does unfold, there's no way to tell exactly how you as the individual or people in your group or people outside of your group are going to behave and respond. There are certain things that are indicative to human behavior, but everything about human behavior is still a variable. There are always these small little things, subtle little things that change just enough and can redirect an entire narrative. Moving forward into these next, I'm thinking 2 years, so through 2023 to 2024, heading towards that edge of 2025, depending upon how these upcoming years go, we are going to still see an increase in private security by people who can afford it. We're going to see an increase in security measures across the board in terms of cameras on the street, not just simply monitoring the individual property that it's on, but many municipalities use cameras as security, and that's going to increase. You're going to have a larger level of surveillance because as long as they can survey, monitor, and maintain a certain level of observable control, they can then redirect things where they need to. We're going to see an increase in drones being operated by law enforcement or by private agencies to, again, maintain coverage, because you can have a drone patrol 1 block around your entire complex. It can sit 50 feet above the ground and it shows you everything that's going on. And again, the technology that's out there right now, photo ID, facial recognition, vehicle ID tracking, motion tracking, everything, that adds an extra layer of security for the people that need it. And it also maintains that sort of overall Big Brother presence because it's going to be there. And depending upon how it's implemented and how it spreads, it may become no different than telephone poles. You just don't really look at them. They're there, but you're not staring at them in awe and wonder. They become just part of the background noise in your everyday actions. And that's something that as an individual you have to be conscious of, because depending upon how things begin to unfold now in the present time and moving forward can make that determination. Are you going to be in an area that does become more of a, Big Brother is watching you, controlling you, similar to the Chinese social credit system, where cameras are everywhere, everything is monitored, transactions are monitored. You have entire sections where if you're jaywalking, cameras catch you, they ID you, they've pinged your phone, they've looked at the location that you just left from and where you're going to, and then you get some civil summons or a point system notification that, hey, the next time this happens, guess what? You're not going to be able to get access to this. We can cut you off from this. If you're out in a suburban or rural area, you may think, okay, you're safe and you're far away. But again, 20 houses out in a rural area, just as easy to monitor as buildings and blocks within a city, because again, there's fewer of you in that rural area, makes it easy to monitor. You're staying on your property, fine, but again, drones and cameras, they can see hundreds of feet with crystal clear clarity, like they're standing right here from the length of your arm to the screen, and see everything that you're doing. So if it's a case of being monitored for safety and security under that premise, they're going to have systems out there that will be able to engage and do that without ever letting you know that you are being watched. So again, you go onto the premise that you're always being watched. So as it is, coming from that end of the system or into a more grittier, grimmer, dystopian type of environment where you do have individual warlords, as it were, that had the money, had the financing, had the resources put in place, and now they control segments and sections of the area around it, whether it's in the heart of a city or it's in a suburban enclave area or out in a rural estate on 500 acres worth of land, and they effectively run the town that the property is in on. Whatever that case may be, that's when you're going to see an almost retro version of the feudal states of Europe and Asia that existed back through the 1400s and 1500s up into the 1600s, where it wasn't governments that were running the country. It was the private citizens, the wealthy individuals that controlled vast areas of the country, of the land, of the waterways, and all the access that way. Here, it would be no different. Not only would it be owning the land, owning the buildings, but owning the businesses, owning the modes of transportation and communication, having direct control over everyone else that doesn't have access to that, and then being able to influence it that way. In many cases, it may simply be they control the means, and then they lease out or lend out that little bit of authority to other smaller groups to get the actual legwork done for them. So with your own personal and private security that you would have to implement, you work it as best you can, what you can afford, what you can do. I'm still in the process of adding some more security layers to my property here. I've been working out a few kinks in the setups that I've got, but it's effectively going to be for the purpose of my family being able to at least be aware of and more observant while we're within our home and on our property of things going on. It's at this point right now, there's, no barbed wire. I do have it though. There's, no man traps and tank traps and things like that. But as it is on the face value, we're increasing the level of security to make it a little less palatable for someone who may in fact just simply be, a person of opportunity, thinks, oh, here's a house, let me go take a peek. So with those small changes, that becomes the deterrent. In a post-apocalyptic SHTF situation, it's a whole different ballgame, because now you're basically taking it into the mindset of everyone knows that now is not the time to play around. And, as they say, F around and find out, that's where things end up going. If you do have a group already, if you have a survival group already, if you've got people that are within your circle, start discussing and planning, because yes, everyone likes to be able to be safe and comfortable in their own place, but some places are not going to be as safe as other places in those conditions. And making the plans to group together, to be able to pick up the people, pick up the resources, and move things around as you need them, to then effectively circle the wagons that way, that's something that needs to be discussed if you have a group like that. If you are truly on your own, then again, you still need to keep those plans open and fluid, because you may have to bug out before you're effectively prepared to, and you may get a chance to come back later, or you may not have a chance at all. So again, it's those things of, as they say, don't put all your eggs in one basket type of situation. You want to be staying flexible as much as possible, and acknowledge that the possibility that something could go sideways faster than what you thought it would is always a real thing. So let me know in the comments, do you think that where we're at right now in terms of the state of security and personal awareness is going to increase because of the crimes that's going on, because of the temperament of the overall flow of things? Like, share, and subscribe. I want to find out where people are at, what they are thinking, and pass this on, please. So this way we have a broader idea of where people are going to be at, where they think they need to be at, and where they think this entire train is going to go. Catch you in the next one.